Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, I'm Mulan Tremaliani, my NPM 2411040163. I'm from class 4F. Here I want to explain about summary and conclusion. Summary is a short form of a text that only tells the main point. It does not include small details and is it written in our own simple word. And conclusion is the last part of a text. It gives the final idea or our opinion and closes the discussion in a simple way. And next, summarize the ideas from this. When monkeys have been playing music from classical to hard rock, they generally prefer silence. The sole exception has come from one experiment in which monkeys appeared to be calmed down by listening to the heavy metal band Metallica. Okay, one sentence. Monkey actually more likes quiet than music, but they are may feel calm when listening to music like Metallica. And the next, I would like to read part 3, unit 5. It's about nonverbal clues. A scientist based in Scotland claims to have found the first evidence of a common language shared by different animal species. The calls, which are understood by monkeys and birds, were discovered by Klaus Zuberbuchler, a psychologist at St. Andrews University. According to Zuberbuchler, animals and birds can communicate complex ideas not just to their peers but across species. The findings have been heralded as a significant breakthrough in the quest to discover the origin of human language and prove that the ability to construct a complex form of communication is not unique to man. Zuber-Buchler made the discovery after spending months observing the calls of monkeys is the Thai forest in Ivory Coast in West Africa. He and his colleagues recorded thousands of monkey calls and spent hundreds of hours listening to the animals' noises. They noticed that the monkeys adapted their calls to change the meaning to warn one another about different threats or opportunities. For example, they said of a leopard farm that a crack alarm call. However, when the merely repeated calls made by other monkeys, they adapt and oh. The researchers found that the calls could be understood by other species of monkey as well as by some birds. What our discoveries showed is that the alarm calls were far more complex than we had thought, said Zuber-Buchler. They were conveying information that was contextual, self-aware, and intelligent. We then tried playing these calls back to other monkeys and responded well in ways that showed they knew the meaning. What's more, the same calls would be recognized by other species like Campbell's monkeys. So they are communicating across species. And since then, we have found that hornbill birds can understand these calls and they too can understand all the different meanings. Among scientists, the idea that animals and birds might be sentient has been around a long time. Chimpanzees are perhaps the most obvious species for comparisons with humans, but their abilities can still surprise as when researchers at Georgia State University Language Research Center in Atlanta taught some to speak. They taught the animals to use voice synthesizers and a keyboard to hold conversation with humans. One sim developed a 3,000 word vocabulary and test suggested she had the language and cognitive skills of a 4-year-old child. Perhaps the most surprising signs of intelligence have been found in birds, whose tiny heads and small brains were long assumed to be a complete barrier to sentience. All that is tending fast, however, with many species showing powerful memorized and reasoning power. A few years ago, iron per bird of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology taught a parrot to recognize and count up to 6 objects and describe their shapes. Last year, that was taught by Oleg Koselnik, a professor of behavioral ecology at Oxford, who discovered that crows are capable of using multiple tools in complex sequence. The first times such behavior had been observed in non-humans. In an experiment, 7 crows successfully reeled in a piece of food placed out of reeds using 3 different lengths of stick. Crucially, they were able to complete the task without any special training, suggesting the birds were capable of a level of abstract reasoning and creativity normally associated only with humans. Last week, it emerged that researchers from Padua University in Italy had found that birds were able to read numbers from left to right, as humans do, and count to 4 even when the line of numbers was moved from vertical to horizontal. They also showed that birds perform better in tests after a good night's sleep. All this is powerful evidence against the idea that people are unique. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.